Okay, so cell division. Cell division is there are two processes of cell division that we're going to discuss in this unit. They're called mitosis and meiosis. Now, the job of cell division is really it's a lot of things, but basically it allows organisms to grow, and it allows organisms to reproduce, and allows organisms to repair themselves. So, based on the process that we're looking at, mitosis or meiosis, we're going to see how one process or both processes work to do these things. So before we get into any of those cell division processes, we have to know about a couple of things real quick. So first of all, cells are constantly growing and reproducing and replacing old dead cells as we go through life processes. A great example of that is our skin cells. We constantly lose skin cells off the surface of our skin. As a matter of fact, most of the dust in your house is made of dead skin cells, which is kind of a gross thing. But since we are constantly replacing those, we don't really tell. It's not like our skin is getting thinner every second of the day. So how does this happen? Well, it's through reproduction. So it says cells play an important part in the reproduction of organisms. So there's two types of reproduction. The first type is called asexual reproduction. This is when offspring is produced from a single parent. Basically, one cell splits, it turns into two cells, and these cells are identical to each other. And now that basically that one cell becoming two has reproduced and created two new cells. A couple of things will do this. Bacteria reproduce asexually, and you can see a couple examples there. So, if you cut a sea star, starfish's um, uh, leg off or arm off, whatever you want to call it, it can regenerate itself. Our skin cells reproduce asexually, which seems kind of odd. How are we going through asexual reproduction? Um, there you go. So our that's a good example. Our skin cells reproduce asexually, even though humans use sexual reproduction. Um, the other type is called sexual reproduction. This is reproduction involving two parents. So if I have a one cell coming from mom and a cell coming from dad, and they come together, well, that's called fertilization. And then this allows a new organism to be created. Sexual reproduction is a combination of a sperm cell and an egg cell. Let me move this stuff out of the way. And what I do here? Combination of sperm cell and egg cell. So here we go. Asexual reproduction. So you can see some things. Unicellular organisms like a bacteria cell, and you see some other things there that will reproduce asexually. Sexual reproduction. If I take a sperm cell from a dad, and an egg cell from a mom, they come together. They're going to create this thing called a zygote, and then that zygote will develop into a baby, which we all started at. Now, in order for all of this to happen, we have this stuff called DNA. DNA, we've learned about, it was one of our organic compounds. We said it's a nucleic acid. It contains all of our genetic information, and it is always in the nucleus of our cells. Now, DNA goes through different forms. When our cells are not dividing, they're just doing their jobs, our DNA is in the form of chromatin. Chromatin is basically this really, really grainy looking stuff that's so tiny that you can't even see it. Okay, basically it just fills up the entire nucleus. But when our cells are going to divide, that chromatin is going to condense and turn into these things called chromosomes. Probably have heard the term chromosomes before. So chromosomes are only going to form when the cell is about to divide and form new cells. You can read these little sentences here. It says chromosomes are a way for the cells to package a huge molecule of DNA into a small nucleus. So if you think of taking a big long rope and stuffing it into a backpack, so we're twisting it and turning it and making it really, really small compared to that rope being really, really stretched out. This DNA, when it's in a chromosome, there's these things called histones. Histones are proteins that the DNA is wrapped around. Prokaryotic chromosomes are a little different, and they're not in a nucleus because guess what? Prokaryotes don't have a nucleus. So it kind of looks like this. This is DNA. This is what it looks like. We're going to spend a whole unit talking about that. But if I take this DNA and I coil it up around these things called histones, and then I coil that thing around each other, and then I coil this big thing around, see how we just kind of keep coiling it and twisting it and making it smaller and smaller and smaller. If you've ever taken a string and just keep twisting one end of it, you'll see it kind of wrap up, but it will get shorter and shorter and shorter and really small. That's kind of what we're doing to form these things called chromosomes. Now, a chromosome before a cell divide has to copy itself. So we call this replication. So when a chromosome copies itself before a cell divides, it basically makes an identical copy of itself, and it turns into something that looks like this. So a chromosome is actually, this is one chromosome, but when it divides, now it's made of two sister chromatids. So I have a left sister chromatid and a right sister chromatid. So the yellow and the blue. Right in the center of that chromosome, I have something called a centromere holding these things together. This is going to be really important when we start talking about the cell division processes, because we have to hold these things together to a certain point, and then we're going to split them, and we'll see that later. These sister chromatids, you can read this next sentence. It says they separate during cell division, and it allows each cell to get a full set of DNA. So if we didn't copy these chromosomes, then when the cell divided, well, we would cut the amount of genetic information in half, and then the next time it divides, you cut it in half again, and so on and so forth. So we have to copy them so that that full set of DNA is being passed on to the next generation. For humans, we have 46 chromosomes in our cells. 46 chromosomes, or we'll call them 23 pairs, and we'll come back to that later. Within our chromosomes and within our DNA, we have these things called genes. A gene is a spot on the DNA that carries a trait, and specifically, it's going to help us to make proteins. And again, I hate to keep saying it, but that's something we're going to really study a lot in a couple units. Last thing here on this video, we have a homologous chromosomes. So a homologous pair of chromosomes is when the chromosomes from mom and dad pair up within a cell. So these are homologous chromosomes. So the yellow would be from mom, the red would be from dad. We have 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes in our cells. Okay, that's a human. Other organisms are going to have different numbers. So part from mom, part from dad. And then the combination of these things is going to give us our traits, and we'll see that when we get to our genetics unit. So we have 23 homologous pairs. When the cell is about to divide, all of those things are going to copy or replicate. So now I have 23 homologous pairs of sister chromatids. Okay, I know this is a little confusing, but we're going to go over this more and more and more and more, and you'll see how this works. So homologous pairs or homologous chromosomes. Within a homologous pairs, there's one from mom and one from dad. In humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And I'm going to stop there with this video.